So guys, in this next news story, two men who battered a celebrity antiques dealer and left him screaming for his life have been jailed for a total of 31 years after a series of violent robberies across London and Kent. This came part of the Met's ongoing determination to protect Londoners from this type of crime, which has a significant impact on victims. James Dixon, he was jailed for 17 years, and Thomas Loring, he was jailed for 14 years. Detective Inspector Kelly Schonage, who led the investigation, said it is simply not right that any individual considers themselves free to steal and bully those around them, just as James Dixon and Thomas Loring left in their wake a series of serious injuries and distress following violent robberies across London. That we know from our investigation that this criminal network was proficient, competent and well organised, with an in-depth understanding of forensics, but thanks to painstaking works of officers, the victims of Dixon and Loring have been given the justice they deserve. In harrowing CCTV footage released today by the Met, Mr. Towning could be heard screaming in terror as he cowered on the floor whilst his store was ransacked, with the thugs making off with £200,000 worth of jewellery. Oh my God, the celebrity antique dealer is heard yelling after falling to the ground, having been hit over the head. Dixon and Loring have now been convicted of a string of violent robberies and burglaries, along with the one at Mr. Towning's store that they committed in and around London early this year. Police said they faced being jailed for their crimes across London and Kent, with Mr. Towning branding the duo vicious and evil. On Monday, after the case against the thugs concluded, with Loring being found guilty of conspiracy to rob, the flying squad officers who snared the offenders after putting them under surveillance described Dixon as being like a loaded gun, walking around ready to go off at any time. Detective Constable Tom Lockwood added, Dixon is just ready to go at any moment and unleash whatever violence he needs to. He's a violent robber who's out to take money as quickly as possible, and he doesn't care about the consequences. Flying squad officers told how Dixon and Loring had previously been convicted of similar offences together and had even been in the same prison before the latest crime wave. Dixon had already been out of prison for 7 months before he committed the first violent crime, and did so whilst on licence, a term that had been extended by 5 years because he had punched a prison governor in the face when a parole hearing hadn't gone his way. Detective Chief Inspector Laura Hillier of the Flying Squad said, "We are going to talk to the judge ahead of sentencing about Dixon's dangerousness, so that when he is eventually released there will be enhanced probation and licensing aspects, because it's really important to show his past history of offending and the impact it's had on his victims and the community as a whole." Detective Constable Lockwood said that Dixon had been offending since he was a teenager, and in the raid on Mr. Towning's store in London's Chelsea, he and Mr. Simmons were both hit on the head with a hammer and repeatedly attacked by Dixon whilst Loring wielded a sledgehammer. The video showed them running into the store before hitting one man with a hammer as he tried to run away, and they pushed another man to the floor before battering Mr. Towning as he reacts in terror. The stricken antique dealer then screams as he falls to the floor, fearing for his life, and Loring slams a sledgehammer onto the table. With chilling pleas of "oh my God," he clings onto the second man and lies on the floor while the two men loot his store. Describing the devastating effect the raid had on his life, Mr. Towning said, "It's really screwed me up. I haven't slept well since. I'm just nervous all the time, and even in my own garden I feel vulnerable. I rarely dare walk down the street, and if I do, I don't like anyone being behind me, and at a restaurant I sit with my back to the wall because I don't trust anyone anymore. My body hurts. It hurts all the time, and even when I go into the shop I don't want to be there anymore, and it's not good for business." During the raid, the offenders, who had previously been convicted in 2013 of violently robbing a post office cash and transit driver of £24,000, used a stolen black Peugeot with false plates. The Flying Squad tracked back to the known associate of Dixon, which Flying Squad Detective Inspector Kelly Schonage said it was a turning point in the investigation. She added, "We relied on good sound detective methods. We meticulously went through hours of CCTV and we looked into the history of the vehicle. And that's when we also knew this was an organised crime group. And that's when we started to look into Dixon." Dixon is believed to have spent more than £2,500 cash at Lacoste and Hugo Boss on London's Regent Street before the detective said he phoned up one of his 3 girlfriends to pick him up. Detective Constable Lockwood said he's an extraordinary brazen criminal. 1 minute he's smashing victims around, kicking them or barging them over and inflicting injuries. The next he's spending the spoils of his crime without any remorse, even using telephones to bell up one of his 3 girlfriends. Deputy Chief Inspector Hillier said that the flying squad was hoping for severe sentences for Dixon and Loring because of the scope that the flying squad has in being able to investigate organised crime groups committing multiple crimes. He said we have a good reputation for working across conspiracies and criminals that show the propensity towards violence. We can work across different forces and areas and ensure that the offences are brought together, and so the sentencing powers can be increased and the victims can see justice being done for them. So following his arrest, Dixon pleaded guilty to multiple offences connected to various robberies and attempted robbery and burglaries, and Loring pleaded not guilty to robbery offences. At his trial, the prosecuting barrister described one of his roles as a getaway driver. He said, Mr. Loring is obviously an accomplished driver and he is adept at using a sledgehammer. He added these 2 men between them would do whatever they can to get cash and property. They showed the jury CCTV footage of the robbery at the store and the jury was shocked. The prosecutor said that Dixon hits Mr. Simmons on the back of the head with a hammer, a blow that knocked him to the floor and caused a cut that needed 10 stitches, and when Mr. Simmons was on the floor, he was then attacked further. The raiders wore balaclavas and gloves, took a £35,000 sapphire and diamond necklace in their haul from their store stocked with £2 million worth of goods. It took the jury 42 minutes to convict Loring of his role in conspiracy, and the news of the conviction of Mr. Townley said, I'm emotional and choked up that I'm glad they've been put away because they are monsters. They have no regard for anyone. They just want to rob and beat us up. They are totally disgusting, and hopefully by the time they'll be out, they will be old men. A man has been convicted of murdering a 60-year-old following an investigation by specialist Met detectives. Marius Zugzida, who's 48, was found guilty of the murder of Brian Shields following a 2-week trial at Wood Green Crown Court. Brian, who lived in a disused pavilion in a park with Zugzidia, was killed by blunt force trauma to the head and chest on the 20th of October 2022. Injuries consistent with multiple punches or kicks. Detective Sergeant David Brooks from the Met Specialist Crime Command said, despite Zugzidia's claim that he and Brian were friends, he subjected him to a sustained and fatal attack. This verdict is a testament to the hard work of the investigation team and numerous witnesses who came forward and the efforts of the wider police team. On the morning of his death, police were called at around 11 o'clock in the morning to the Orchard playing fields in Redbridge following reports of an unresponsive man at the location. Despite the efforts of emergency services, Brian sadly died. At the scene, Zugzidia approached the cordon despite being told by officers that he could not enter the park. He then spoke with officers and said that he had been with Brian the previous evening. He said that he had slept at the location and had woken up there that morning to find Brian dead. He said, I killed him today, I don't know what. He then said something incomprehensible before saying, my friend, in the morning, I killed him now. Officers noted that Zugzida's hand appeared to have scuff marks on them and scratches on them, and when later questioned by detectives about his earlier comments, he said that the police officer must have misunderstood what he said. In an interview, he said that he and Brian arrived at the park at around 8 o'clock on the 19th of October 2022, and at some point that evening, Zugzida said he had left Brian to get water from a local shop. He claimed that upon leaving and returning to Brian, he found him uninjured. He confirmed that it was the only 2 of them at the location, and that they had sat up for a period of time drinking and smoking before Zugzida had fallen asleep next to Brian at the pavilion. To confirm Zugzidia's claims, detectives viewed 10 hours of CCTV footage from the 2 nearest shops to the park and found that Zugzida has visited one to buy water and alcohol, but that at the time he had visible red staining on his trousers. This was later forensically examined and identified as Brian's blood, contradicting his account of Brian being uninjured before he went to sleep. So he's been remanded in custody ahead of sentencing on Thursday, the 13th of February. I just want to say rest in peace to the victim and my condolences go out to you.